Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
We're continuing with our literature unit for the month of November, and our featured novel was published back in 1937, but you can still read it. It's still a great read today as it was then. And the title, of course, of that novel is Death on the Nile by the Queen of Crime, Agatha Christie. She certainly published some great novels and short stories and plays that were all concerned with detectives and solving crimes and things like that.
Yeah. So today we're moving on with the plot. There are other people involved as well. You know that our primary characters, though, are the three involved in the love triangle, which is a very famous way of talking about a couple. And one has been dumped by another. And so, you know, there's some bad, resentful, bitter feelings. So we're going to continue and find out more about what happened when we last left you. We talked about how Simon was shot in the leg, and Jacqueline is the one who shoots him. But then there's commotion or chaos after he's shot, and suddenly the gun disappears.
Oh, no, and that's a prime piece of evidence there.
The next morning, here's the kicker we left you, telling you that the next morning, Lynette, the beautiful, wealthy heiress, was found dead. She was shot in the head.
Yep, somebody actually killed her. They did not waste their time and shoot her in the leg or the foot or the hand or something. They actually got her right in the noggin, right in the head. And people usually don't survive something like that. So let's find out what happens next in our story. Let's summarize today's plot, and we'll come back to talk about it. Poirot immediately starts his investigation to find the murderer. Jacqueline would have been a likely suspect, but she has a perfect alibi. People were with her at the time Lynette was killed. Poirot interviews Louise, but the maid gives vague answers and implies that she knows more than she is saying. Jacqueline's gun is then fished out of the Nile. It has been wrapped in a shawl along with a handkerchief with a pink stain. The gun is missing 2 bullets. In Lynette's cabin, Poirot finds a bottle of red ink disguised as nail polish. He also notices a bullet hole in a table in the room where Simon was shot. Then a second death occurs. Louise is found stabbed in her cabin. Louise was clutching money in her hand, and this makes Poirot suspect she knew who killed Lynette and was planning to blackmail them. She was killed to keep her quiet. Just then, another passenger informs Poirot that she saw who killed Louise. Simon, who is present at the time, loudly proclaims his surprise. However, before this vital evidence can be disclosed, the passenger is shot by someone outside the room. The unseen killer escapes pursuit. Poirot realizes that this second gun belongs to Pennington, who earlier in the voyage claimed that he always traveled armed. He confronts Pennington, who admits his gun has been stolen. Moreover, Pennington confesses he was the one who dislodged the big rock that nearly hit Lynette from the cliff, though he did so by accident. However, he can also prove that he was in other passengers' company when the 3 deaths took place. Pennington is not the murderer, but who is?
Okay, guys, let's continue on with the plot. We've got Poirot. He immediately starts his investigation because we've got a true murder now. Before he was invited to kind of watch Jacqueline and make sure she wasn't causing trouble for Simon and Lynette. But now, this is real crime. This is a murder that's happened on the steamboat. And so he does his best to begin to investigate. Notice in the first sentence, our vocabulary word is investigation, which is the noun form of the verb to investigate. So if you are investigating something, you're doing a kind of a formal look into something. We use it a lot with criminal investigations, crimes. Someone can be under investigation, meaning the police suspect him or her of doing something, but they haven't been formally charged with a crime. But if they're under investigation, the police and detectives are trying to gather all the clues they can to figure out what exactly is going on. So he starts his investigation to find the murderer.
Yep, he's collecting evidence. He's talking to people. He's trying to figure out who murdered somebody. And Jacqueline would have been a likely suspect, but she has a perfect alibi. People were with her at the time Lynette was killed. So based on the information, it seems that Jacqueline would have been the likely suspect. They probably think, hey, it must have been her. She has the motive, so she must have done this. Unfortunately, though, she has the perfect alibi. People were with her at the time of Lynette's murder. So she can say, hey, I've got people who say that I was here with these people. I could not have killed Lynette because I wasn't there, and these people can prove it.
Right. So here's that word alibi. Yeah, if you have an alibi, you're in pretty good shape, but an alibi isn't quite enough sometimes if there's a stronger evidence against you, especially if your alibi is that I was home alone watching TV. You need somebody else to back you up. So here is Poirot. He interviews Louise. Remember, she's the maid who's cute. But if you give vague answers, vague just means not very specific, kind of unclear. And a lot of people do that on purpose so that you don't really know what's going on. But if you don't want to let people know what you were doing, or you don't really like that they're questioning you, you can be vague. Well, I was busy.
And remember, Louise is the maid. She is Lynette's maid, so she might know something. So Poirot interviews her. Where were you on the night of the murder, etc.? But she was very vague. She was not specific. And this makes Poirot think, she probably knows more than she's revealing. She probably knows more about this, but she just doesn't want to say for some reason. And then Jacqueline's gun is fished out of the Nile. That's an interesting phrase, to fish out. That just means you find something after you've been looking for it, especially if it's been hidden. And I guess they knew where the gun might be in the Nile River, so they found it and they fished it out of the Nile River. Maybe they had metal detectors or something like that. I don't think they had them back then. Maybe they did. I don't know. But
I think someone witnessed the gun going into the Nile.
Okay, so they knew where it was, and someone was able to dive down there and get the gun. And further, it has been wrapped in a shawl along with a handkerchief with a pink stain. Now, a shawl is a piece of cloth that is usually worn by women over the shoulders. It's kind of like a scarf, but it's bigger and it covers the shoulders, whereas a scarf just goes around your neck usually.
Right. A shawl. You'll see them in the winter sometimes. It's so hot here. I just don't like to have anything extra. So it was wrapped in a shawl along with a handkerchief with a pink stain. So that handkerchief actually had what looked to be blood, right? So it's pink, and the water makes the red a little lighter, so it turns out to look kind of pink. Along with just means accompanying something else. So I went to the movie along with 3 friends of mine last night. So they went with me, they accompanied me, and a stain usually is what you get on your clothing if you are eating and you're not careful, and maybe some ketchup or mustard or soy sauce drips down on your clothes. If you don't wash it out very quickly, sometimes that stain or that mark remains in your clothes, which isn't good.
Yeah, I had a nice dress shirt at one time, but I got a spaghetti stain on it, spaghetti sauce, and no matter what I did, I could not wash that stain out, so eventually I had to throw that shirt away. So again, we've got the gun wrapped in a shawl, and there's a handkerchief there that has a pink stain on it, and the gun is missing 2 bullets. Okay, usually guns can hold 6 bullets if it's a 6-shooter, and in this particular case, 2 2 bullets were missing, which implies that 2 shots were fired from that gun. And Lynette's cabin, Poirot finds a bottle of red ink disguised as nail polish. So red ink is used in pens, maybe fountain pens, or for artwork or whatever. So there's red ink. But they made this look like nail polish. Nail polish, of course, is what ladies use to make their fingernails different colors. Red is the most common color, but there are other colors of nail polish. And if people look at this bottle of red ink, they'll think that it's nail polish, but it really isn't. It's actually red ink.
Yeah, so if you disguise something, you just change the appearance of something. Or maybe you're trying to hide someone's real identity or conceal their identity. So it's pretty clever. He also notices a bullet hole in a table in the room where Simon was shot. So he probably starts thinking, So this is red ink. It's supposed to be blood. And this bullet hole in the table probably means that Simon really wasn't shot in the leg. They probably just put some red ink on his leg to make it look like he'd been shot. Then a second death occurs, and Louise is found stabbed in her cabin.
No.
Yeah, it's easy to get a hold of a knife. So, yeah, that would be a pretty easy murder to commit. So we think at this point that Louise did see something, that she witnessed something, and the real murderer, of course, doesn't want Louise talking. So they go ahead and kill her, too. We're going to take a quick break now, guys. Listen to our Chinese teacher, and then we'll be back to continue talking about this murder mystery.
听众朋友大家好，我是安娜。我们昨天提到尼罗河谋杀案啊，因为已经有人死了 Lynette 是被头部射杀死于自己的仓房之内，所以白罗侦探呢就为了要找出凶手开始调查啦。当然最有可能杀 Lynette 的一定是 Jacqueline 嘛，可是他有一个完美的不在场证明，一个 alibi， 因为 Lynette 被杀的时候当时有人跟 Jacqueline 在一起。好，我们来看一下第一段第二句这个地方。首先我们刚刚说的这个不在场证明啊，就在破折号前面叫做 alibi。那破折号之后就说明了当时的不在场是一个什么样的情况。不过在破折号这边呢，我们看到有3个字，你可以把它框起来，叫做 at the time。字面上就是在当时，可是在这里其实是连接词 when 的意思。好，那后来这个白罗侦探呢就询问 Louis， 记得这个 Louis 是 Lynette 的女仆嘛？那 Louis 居然给了一些含混不清的答案，而且还暗示说他其实可能知道的更多哦。所以证据就一一的浮现了。什么样的浮现呢？因为首先第一个 Louis 居然可能会知道谁杀了 Lynette。那第二个证据就是 Louis 这个 Jacqueline 的枪后来就被从这个尼罗河上面打捞上岸了。然后还有一些证据包括 Lynette 的船舱当中啊，白罗侦探发现了一个伪装成指甲油的红色墨水耶。我们看一下第一段第7句这个地方有一个简化的限定用法的关系子句。第7句这里的先行词是 a bottle of red ink， 有一瓶红色的墨水，后面的 disguised 一直到句尾可以左右括号起来，它本来省略的是冠带 which 或者是 that 跟 be 动词的 is。 好，句子原本是说呢，白罗侦探他发现了一瓶被伪装成指甲油的红色墨水，那只是把 which that冠带呢跟这个 be 动词整个省略掉。那我们再说一下句子的简化哦，基本上 which 跟 that 的这个冠带就有连接词的功能，所以连接词如果删掉的话，后面的 be 动词 is 会变成 being， 那 being 在句子简化里面又会被删掉，所以括号里面这个简化的关系子句就只剩下 pp 的 disguised。 所以基本上读者朋友你们根本就不需要去分主动或者是被动，因为在原本完整的句子当中，当句子被简化连接词不见的时候， be 动词变成 being 又会被删掉，所以自然而然就会剩下 pp。 好，接下来的第8句同样也是一个限定用法的关系子句哦。这第8句啊，其实先行词是 the room， 就在那个房间。 哪个房间呢？ where 到句尾可以先左右括号，不过在这里的 where 是一个关系副词，所谓的关系你就把它想成是连接词 and， 然后后面所谓的副词呢，就是跟先行词有关的那个地点，所以 where 其实是 and in the room， 那 where 后面就会加上完整的句子，我们看到的是 Simon was shot。 好，所以第8句到底在说什么？第8句说的是白罗侦探注意到Simon 被枪杀的船舱的这个桌上呢，还有一个弹孔哦。好，那这个证据一一浮现了之后，到底发生又什么事呢？又有一个意外，接着第2起的命案又发生 ，Louis 居然也在他自己的仓房当中遭到了刺杀。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Okay, let's continue with our summary. And lots of things are happening here. Poirot is getting involved in this case, and he's gathering evidence to try to solve the crime. And remember, the gun was fished out of the Nile. It was wrapped in a shawl. There was also a handkerchief with a pink stain, and the gun was missing 2 bullets. And then in Lynette's cabin on the boat, Poirot finds a bottle of red ink disguised as nail polish, and he also sees a bullet hole in a table in the room where Simon was shot. And then there's another murder, another death. Louise, the maid, is found stabbed in her cabin. So somebody poked her with a knife. She was stabbed, and she died as a result of her injuries. And that's the next murder. And poor Louise, she probably knew too much.
I think that's probably a good guess there. So moving on to the next paragraph, it says that Louise was clutching money in her hand. To clutch means to grasp or hold on or seize tightly onto something. So she was clutching money in her hand. Sounds like maybe she was trying to extort money from someone by saying, oh, I saw what you did, but if you'll pay me some money, I'll keep my mouth shut.
Trying to blackmail them,
yeah,
probably.
You know what? That ends up usually hurting the person trying to get that money from the real criminal. And this makes Poirot suspect she knew who killed Lynette and was planning to blackmail them. Yeah, you see this a lot in, on TV and movies, but in real life too. Blackmail goes on all the time. If someone knows you did something bad and it could embarrass you or get you into big trouble, all they have to do is go, if you give me money, I'll keep my mouth shut.
If you know the boss has been hanging around with his secretary after work, maybe you have that information and you can say, hey, I'll tell your wife all about your little affair with your secretary, and you can stop me by giving me $1 million or something like that.
Because your boss, of course, could just kill you.
You never know, yeah, so you better know what you're doing if you're in a situation like that.
Don't do it. Yep.
But in any case here, I guess whoever stabbed Louise did not see Louise clutching money in her hand, so Poirot sees that there's money kept in her hand, and it makes it look like she was trying to blackmail Lynette and Simon. And she was killed to keep her quiet. She knew too much. And just then another passenger informs Poirot that she saw who killed Louise. So we've got another witness here, another passenger on that steamboat. This person just happened to be walking by the room and maybe heard screams and looked in through the keyhole or through the window or whatever. So this passenger is a witness, and that passenger tells Poirot that she saw the killer.
Ooh, however, before this vital evidence can be disclosed, the passenger is shot by someone outside the room. A lot of people getting shot and killed in this little movie or book. It's a book here. So if something is disclosed, guys, it's just revealed. Maybe there's some information that has been kept confidential or is considered to be top secret. And then if it's disclosed, it just means that it's revealed to other people. It's been allowed to be seen or known by other people. So this vital evidence, before it's disclosed or revealed, that passenger who was going to give Poirot some more evidence, he's shot by someone outside the room. And this time, the killer is unseen and escapes pursuit. If you escape pursuit, it means you get away before they can chase you down and catch you.
That's basically what happened here. Somebody stabbed Louise. The killer noticed that somebody saw him doing it or her doing it, and so they killed the passenger because you need to eliminate the witnesses so you can get away with the crime.
Yeah.
Now, Poirot realizes that this second gun belongs to Pennington, who earlier in the voyage claimed that he always traveled armed. So remember, the passenger was shot by someone outside the room. So I guess the killer ran away, but the gun was left behind. Maybe the killer dropped the gun. So now they have that as evidence. And Poirot realizes he can see that this second gun actually has an owner. It belongs to the financial advisor or the financial administrator whose name is Pennington. And earlier in this trip or earlier in this voyage, he said, well, I always travel armed. You know, I'm a financial administrator. People are always trying to steal the money, so I need to have a gun to protect myself and to stop people from stealing that money.
Which makes sense to me. Now, here it says Pennington earlier in the voyage claimed that he always traveled armed. So we know that he actually confessed earlier to saying, oh, I have a gun always, because you know, you never know who's going to try to take money off me. So he traveled armed to protect himself. Voyage is a word we use to talk about a long trip, usually by sea. It doesn't have to be, but typically we use it for the water journeys over the water or under the water if you're in a submarine. Now, he confronts Pennington, and we're talking about Poirot here. If you confront somebody, it just means you meet them face to face, and it's usually because you have something you want to argue about, or you feel hostile towards them. You're trying to deal with a problem that's pretty difficult. So he confronts Pennington and says, hey, I know you have a gun, so where is that gun? And at that point, Pennington admits his gun has been stolen. I would have said that a long time ago, just so that no one would suspect me. But at this point, Pennington does say, yeah, I do have a gun, but someone stole it earlier.
Exactly. So Poirot probably recognized that the gun belonged to Pennington, and so he confronted him. Hey, I got this gun, and I know it's your gun. And at that point, Pennington confesses that it is his gun, but he admits that his gun was stolen earlier in the voyage. Moreover, Pennington confesses he was the one who dislodged the big rock that nearly hit Lynette from the cliff, though he did so by accident. So he provides a little bit more information here. He confesses. And when you confess something, you admit the truth. You were trying to hide it before, and you finally said, well, okay, I did it. I confess. I said bad things about our fearless leader. I confess. So you can take me off to a labor camp and torture me. This happens sometimes in dictatorships. And in this particular case, though, it's an investigation for the crime, and Pennington, he admits, he confesses that he's the one who pushed that rock over the cliff, which almost hit Lynette, but he says it was an accident. Maybe he was hiking up there on the cliff trying to get a good view for a picture or something, and he accidentally bumped into that rock, and it fell down and almost hit Lynette, and he didn't have time to warn her, watch out, there's a big boulder about to hit you. Yeah, it was probably too late.
Yeah, and then, you know, he probably feels awful and doesn't want anyone to find out because he's embarrassed. We use confess sometimes when we are hiding something that we're ashamed of or we're embarrassed about. And this looks like why Pennington finally confessed. He didn't want people to know it was his clumsiness or his inattention to something. He wasn't paying attention, so he almost killed someone by being sloppy or not, just not very careful as he was walking along. It says here, however, Pennington can prove he was in other passengers' company when the 3 deaths took place, so it can't be him. Again, this gives him a good, solid alibi, as we talked about earlier.
Right, so far we've got 3 deaths. We got Lynette, we got Louise the maid, and we've got the passenger who witnessed the stabbing. And so, yes, indeed, Pennington has an alibi here. He was with other passengers when those 3 murders happened. And Pennington is not the murderer. And if he is not the murderer, then who is? You'll have to join us next time to find out. But right now, we're going to listen to our Chinese teacher.Louis
的手里还拿着钱哦，所以白罗侦探就怀疑说，很有可能是因为 Louis 知道谁杀了 Lynette， 所以他打算要敲诈这个人，然后才会被杀的。我们来看一下第2段第1句的地方，第1句逗点之后啊，后面看到一个 suspect， 好，注意，它在这里是 make someone do something， 实义动词的用法，使 poirot。suspect 怀疑这件事，那在这里它是动词的用法哦，因为如果你念 suspect， 它就是名词的嫌疑犯，所以白罗就怀疑说，可能是 Louis 他有要这个敲诈某人的意思，所以就遭到杀害。不过就在这个时候，另外一个乘客又告诉白罗说他知道是谁杀了 Louis， 那当场的这个 Simon 呢就很大声的表示他的惊讶。为什么要这么大声呢？我们在明天呢会告诉大家真正的答案。为什么要这么大声啊？就是关键的证据要被揭露之前，这个乘客他突然又被射杀了。我们来看一下第2段第4句，因为 Simon 是我们这一课的主角，那主角之后要补充说明的状况，我们就会用非限定用法的关系子句，所以 Simon 之后逗点的 who 到 time 逗点这边可以左右挂号起来。它这里的用法跟接下来第3段的第1句是一样的，因为我们提到 Pennington， 原来 Pennington 啊拥有一把枪，那这个 Pennington 逗点之后 who 到句尾也可以左右挂号起来，就是补充说明 Pennington 的状况。那为什么他手上会有枪呢？因为他就说呢，他只要去旅行的时候啊 he always traveled armed， 都会带着武器到处旅行，所以这个白罗侦探就跟 Pennington 对峙，然后呢这个 Pennington 就说我的枪被偷了，然后还承认说这个悬崖上面啊差一点击中Lynette的那块大石头是他不小心移动的。好，我们来看一下第3段，在第3句这个地方感觉有点复杂哦，其实它有2个关系子句。第一个关系子句是先行词的 the one 一直到 who 后面这个地方左括号，在后面逗点 cliff 逗点的地方右括号。那这个关系子句当中又包含另外一个关系子句，先行词是 the big rock， 那关系子句开始是从 that 一直到 cliff 这个地方。好，所以到底是谁杀了谁呢？我们明天才会知道结果。我是安娜，我们明天见。
Okay, that brings us to the end of our lesson for today, but make sure you join us again next time. Spoiler alert! We will reveal who the murderer is in our next program, so if you want to be surprised or if you want to see the movie or read the book yourself, we suggest you don't listen to our program next time, but, well, I don't know. You should listen because I suppose your teacher is going to require you to, so I guess you're in kind of a dilemma there. You'll have to figure out what to do yourself. From all of us here at English Digest, my name is Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.